sure people will filter in. So just take a breath and center yourself in this moment. Let the story fall away. Attention at the forehead and crown. And just find a spot in front of you on the floor or on the wall or on the desk to let your eyes rest. This allows you to find the stillness within the story. Because those two things are not separate. The story is actually composed of stillness. Not something to take my word for, but something you'll see if you meditate long enough with your eyes open. The story arises out of the pregnant empty space. It doesn't arise as a story. The arising is just a collection of energy with stillness as its deepest nature. But we take that collection of energy and compare it to another collection of energy. We split the one who's perceiving from what they're perceiving. Until we have all these seemingly separate little parts to weigh against each other, even though they're all made of the exact same thing. And the power of that complexity is multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. Until you have this complicated personal world. But its complication is a trick of the mind. The story that arises out of those permutations of meaning is a trick of the mind. the seed for that process started before anyone can remember, or maybe was always there. And it gets passed down from person to person. A big dollop from your parents, a big dollop from your teachers. But every person you share even a moment's connection with has contributed to that process in you. And when you wake up to it, it loses a giant piece of its control over you. It doesn't lose all of its control. Because we're still here in a body, and that body is itself a story. A combination of things seemingly separate and sitting in relation to each other. This sense that you have of yourself, this storyline that's centered around a name, is itself a temporary swirl of a story in the ocean of stories. And you can completely let it go, but that's usually the beginning of the end of this body. One thing to let it go so that you can see what's real. But at some point, if you aren't moving things forward in your world begins to collapse. We see this with teachers that go into bliss states. Suddenly their disciples are having to feed them and bathe them and take care of them, and at some point their body just starts getting ill from lack of maintenance and individualized purpose. But it loses that grip on you, whereas before you woke up to it, there's almost no limit to the depth that it can push you down, if that's your direction of choice. For others, it's a frenetic upswing. The upswings lead to the down, eventually. Once you know that that's not your ultimate truth, then there are just lines that you won't sink beneath. If you give your belief to a story, knowing in the back of your head it's not really real, then when the story takes a really bad turn, you can mostly pull out of it, even while continuing to live it out. It's an interesting line you walk as you're waking up. Stepping through the world, bringing clarity and focus and groundedness to this world of people stories, engaging, but long before that final part of you gets lost in it, you pull back out and wake up and make sure that you're clear. You look at the choices that you made when you were engaged and see if they're still the right choices. Make little corrections. You know, in the Hindu traditions, where the Bhagavad Gita is one of the big holy books, which is an allegorical story about living in the story. All of the beneficial inclinations that don't damage your road towards wakefulness are at battle with all of your less useful inclinations that would lead you into sluggishness and sleep and lower vibrations. And the general recommendation at the beginning of the book is that every night you should step into wakefulness and look at your day and just ask, how did it go? Who won today? What did I feed today? What did I give into? What is the nature of what I gave into today? And it's not something to feel guilty about. It's not something to take to a religious place. It's just a gentle commitment to forward movement and staying awake. I think most of us feel like we can probably just sort of wing it. Like we can just get up, live out our day, and keep half an eye on our spiritual life, and that's probably good. I used to have a lot of students who I would ask people to meditate a minimum of 15 minutes a day, sitting meditation, and I would always get students that would say, well, I tend to just bring my meditation into things, I am meditating, but I'm not meditating that way. And I would ask, why not? And they're like, well, I don't want to, I just, have been, so I just, I pay attention when I'm driving to work, or I pay attention when I'm walking around. And it's not that you can't do that. But there's a reason that you're not willing to sit down for 15 minutes and just do nothing but be wakeful. And what is that reason? Not that one is good and one is bad. That's not really what matters. That's not really how life works. It's that one is something you can't make yourself do, and the other is something that you do instead of the thing that you're not able to make yourself do. So Anna's saying self-care is 100% dedication every day. It's taking out power. It's taking our power back. It's true. You know, Julie Andrews used to talk about discipline. She was a very disciplined person. She would say what people don't realize about discipline is it's actually what sets you free. It's actually gives you the ability to safely be flexible, whereas most people view it as rigidity. But my point is not to give you some hard line about do this or you're doing it wrong. My point is to let you know that you probably can't wing it without a lot of backslide. That you really do need things set in place to keep your wheels on the track. You know, it doesn't have to be a boot camp, but it's probably going to have to be something. I think 15 minutes a day is a reasonable minimum bar. But those things that you find yourself resisting, they tell you where your stuck parts are. And walking right into them actually is going to yield personal power. You've had this experience before. If you ever had something that just, oh God, you just don't feel like doing it, and you've made it so big in your head, and you just can't even make yourself get started on it. But maybe you're at a phase in your life where, you know, someone eventually is going to fire you if you don't get something done, or there's going to be consequences, so it does actually have to get done. Have you ever noticed that moment when you sit down and actually force yourself to start working on it, that it's nothing like what you built it up to be in your head, and that just the act of moving forward on it comes with its own relief and its own sense of kind of power and energy? Above and beyond the feeling you have of getting it done, just no longer resisting it yields its own sense of accomplishment and power. This life and all of your hang-ups are so perfect because on the other side of all of the things that you push away from is your next step spiritually. It's that step that actually integrates you more deeply into what your life is really about, and it opens up the stuck flow of power and energy in you. I would love to say that you eventually get to a point where you just don't have that story of resistance. I have absolutely no evidence that that is true. Some of my most powerful teachers, I watched them resist all kinds of things. I myself often resist coming here. I've had a long day. I have a meeting at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. But when that comes up, I know it's just a story. And so while that story can still form, it still has that much control. It can't keep me from coming here. Because I know. I know that even if I have nothing to say and no energy to teach with, the second I sit down and let go and just start speaking to whatever energy is in front of me, it's all going to flow out as a fully completed teaching. Whatever this energy is, it actually cares more about your growth than mine. When I sit down with all of you, it all just flows. I think there's just strength in numbers. So you want to have something every day that is set up, that you're going to do whether you feel like it or not. There's a balance that needs to be struck between two situations. One, it needs to be doable enough that you could actually picture yourself doing it. It needs to be sustainable and doable. But two, it has to push up against your boundary a little bit so that it yields some power, so that it expands your consciousness a little bit beyond where it currently is. So for most people, that's start with 15 minutes a day. And then let your curiosity kind of pull you forward. When 15 minutes a day becomes easy and something you look forward to, then just start extending it. And once you're feeling strong, then you can really start challenging yourself. There's a teaching I've given 1,000,000 times in my life, but I probably haven't said this in a few years. There are these thresholds in the meditative state. And they're at different points for everybody. For me, when I would meditate and I would get to the 45-minute mark, there would be this sense of doneness that I would feel, this feeling like I need to get up now and move on and do other things. It was, I think I used to call it the gateway of boredom. And what that is it's actually a resistance. It's a barrier. And on the other side of that resistance is more personal power. When you reach a barrier like that, if instead of just giving in to what the mind is telling you to do, you just continue to breathe through it and open up into that space and just allow it to do its thing and pass, On the other side of that, there is this expansion of consciousness. You become bigger in a way that would be difficult to put into words. But that's what happens when you actually get to that place where you can say, all right, I'm gonna sit here for a few hours. You start to actually find your limitations, and maybe you lose a few of those battles in the beginning. The mind can be very convincing. But all it takes is one time where you consciously say, all right, I understand everything I'm feeling. I accept that I'm uncomfortable. What if it's okay for me to just sit here and be open and uncomfortable while I just breathe in and breathe out? And you'll sail past that threshold and you'll see what I'm talking about. And once you do, you'll suddenly understand how just about every discomfort in your life presents an unbelievable opportunity for growth. So for me, there was one at the 45-minute mark. There was always another one around the hour and 15-minute mark. And there's just these openings that come from it deep inside of your awareness. Or times when you just really don't feel like doing something that you know would be good for you. So many times I've not had the energy to do something, especially with my spiritual life. And then you decide you're going to get up and do it anyways. And it's like suddenly there's all the energy. You weren't tired at all, you were just blocked. And the second you unblocked it, there was all that energy. The pump was primed and everything was flowing. It takes a fair amount of awareness to be able to work with yourself in this way. But anybody here tonight should be able to do that. Okay, now Joanna's posted something. Let's see what this is. Liam, do you have any thoughts or advice on strong determination sitting? I'm able to do it for like 40 minutes, trying for longer. It seems like this is what you're talking about, typing this while you're talking about it. So this is a tricky area. Strong determination sitting isn't quite what I'm talking about. I understand why it sounds like that. I'm talking about extending your meditation. Strong determination is about concentration. So when you first start sitting, you usually begin with some degree of concentration because you've got certain things that are in motion in your story and they don't want to let go. And so the fastest road to kind of just pull yourself out of the story is to pull yourself out of the story, to hold a different focus and shift into meditation. And then after a little bit of time kind of focusing there, watching your breath, and kind of just marrying yourself to this relatively narrow focus, then there's enough free space around you that you can actually just let go and be with your point of focus. At that point, you're no longer clinging to the breath. You are just breathing and nothing else. That is your home. You are in this moment, breathing and aware, and you have made that your home. You're abiding there. That's meditation. And for most people, it'll take about 15 minutes to get there for a few years. Now, my concentration is just the steps up to this room. And as soon as I sit in this chair, everything just opens right up. And you'll get there too. But so from that meditation, it's like there you are abiding gently in this place. And everything is open, so power is just flowing through you and kind of charging you like a battery, which at first just feels like relaxation and a good night's sleep. But when you're sitting for longer periods of time, it goes deeper than that. But after a certain period of time of just kind of charging and being and letting go, your personality bumps up against a wall. It's like on some level, your story self, the part of you that isn't real, the part of you that is entirely made out of limitations, knows that if you go another few steps like that, you're going to change in a way that's going to be hard to change back. You're going to lose some piece of the personality or some piece of your belief in the personality story that is going to make it so that the personality loses a little bit of its grip on you as a consciousness. And so the personality starts to squirm. Now, yes, in that moment, you could tighten your concentration. The problem with that is that while you're doing that, you're really simultaneously resisting the personality. And whatever you resist, it's like you have to keep your hand on it. So it doesn't really go anywhere. It stays exactly where it is. It doesn't evolve. It just sort of stays there stuck while you kind of grab it by the neck. Instead, you have to let the personality be the personality. Let the discomfort be the discomfort. Let this stirring and hunger to be doing anything else be a stirring and a hunger to do anything else. And you just be the watcher of your breath. Stick with whatever your chosen point of focus was, and just let the personality squirm. When it stops squirming, a part of you will have unfolded in a way that now energy can flow, consciousness can flow, and you'll be able to see more. You won't know what to do with it, but you'll know that you've expanded. Every time you do something like that, every time you just trust that it's going to be okay and you just permit that discomfort to have its own space, for nothing to have to change, you become stronger in a really foundational way. This is the best thing that can happen to a story. Because it means that it means that when you go deeper into your spiritual life, you have that strength and awareness to do that. But even when you return to the illusion, when you go back to the story life, a lot of the barriers that you have in the story, you actually will have the strength to walk past because you know how to stay open in the face of discomfort. For me to become, so I'm an epidemiologist by training, and for me to become that, I had to take all of these hardcore science classes, and science and math were always my worst subjects as a kid. I barely made it out of any of them alive. And when I went to college for it, I was, just coming out of my training. And in order to get into my program, I had to ace all these science courses, all the way up through organic chemistry, which meant I had to become something different than I currently was. I had to actually step in, release all the triggers I had around it that I had cultivated over years. Every story I had about it had to be put aside, and I had to give myself to its study. And I aced all of them. I understood them better than anyone. I fell in love with it, actually. I think chemistry is one of the most fascinating fields ever. I actually teach biochemistry now in my nutrition program. When you live like that, even the illusory life becomes part of your spiritual journey. I used to take the formulas in the books into my meditations and just place them on the screen of my mind and just look at them. The other students in the class, to them it was just calculations and numbers. They didn't really have a deep understanding of those formulas. Over time, I actually came to just get how these formulas were put together, how all of that worked. I remember the moment something clicked in my head and I could think in formulas. And it was just this giant revelation to me. I mean, to some people who are just naturally like this, that's not a big deal. But to me, that was a major shift from where I knew how to go. I was driving my car, I could tell you the moment it happened. And it was just this burst of light. And suddenly when I looked at a formula, it was like having a conversation. It was like some scientist just showing me the tracks that they had taken to get to their understanding and how they had pieced it together symbolically so that people could work with it. But where are your blockages? What's your chemistry? Is it approaching people that you're afraid to talk to? Is it asking for something you think you deserve? Is it pursuing a career? Is it becoming more insistent on self-care? Is it saying difficult but honest things to people? Or learning how to say no? Is it finally giving in to your spiritual practice? Where are those walls that have all your power trapped on the other side of them? Pick one. Pick one and walk right into it. Take steps, set cycles in motion that assume you're going to keep walking into your fear. And as those feelings arise and tell you that you need to do everything else to get away from it, Find your openness and keep walking. You're right. Your personality isn't made for that. You're right. Your personality can't go there. But you are not your personality. And if your personality is allowed to limit where you can go, then your personality is a prison. You don't have to burst through every wall. There are only so many hours in a lifetime. But those places that you want to go, that you feel like you can't, you have to just start taking steps towards them. What's beautiful about meditation is that for most people, it's the ultimate thing no one wants to do. Everybody wants to have done it. They just don't want to actually do it. Although in this room I might be preaching to the choir. So it's a great thing to set up every day, that you're going to do a minimum of 15 minutes and build from there. Just know that it applies to everything in life. Don't live an unchallenged life. And don't let life pick all the challenges. If you don't challenge yourself, life will find a way to make itself unpleasant anyways. Pick that head on, pick your challenges head on, make some choices. The funny thing is if you do that, you'll find life conspires to help you. Especially if some of the challenges that you pick are for the good of the whole. But sometimes the best thing you can do for the whole is have what you personally need. So, no need to be a saint about it. Any questions about that? I know I've talked a lot, but I get the feeling that you guys needed to hear this. All right, so let's go into meditation and just still ourselves a bit before we end for the night. A good practice in your own personal meditation is to always wait until you're not hungry to get up before you end. It shows the mind who's boss. Okay, guys. Nice work. Any questions before we end for the night? Your energy was very quiet. You're doing very well. Okay, everyone. I will be here next week. I will see you guys then, and give yourself some time to brush up against your boundaries and stay open in the face of them. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Liam.
My pleasure, Joanna. Thank you.